Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Sports Talk with Austin. And this is Austin. Austin, of course, your host of Sports Talk with Austin. And welcome to tonight's edition of College Basketball and Chill. And we've got a lot to discuss tonight. We've got some bubblicious action. North Carolina taking down Virginia Tech, Indiana, how their bubble hopes maybe done and over with. We also got a major, I don't know if you want to call it upset, but number 22 Texas A&M takes down number 1 Auburn. Oh, there's plenty to go through tonight. The Sun Belt tournament happened tonight. There's quite a bit to get to, but it's college basketball and chill, and this is a college show. So if you want to call in and join in on the conversation and talk about March Madness, college basketball, feel free to. That's what this is here for. Be a nice, chill show. Come hang. Give me your opinions. This is what this is. Give me your opinion on anything that you want. I mean, if you want to give me your opinion on the SEC being better than the Big 12, by all means, you could come in here and do it. But I put the call-in link in the chat. If you would like to come chat, it would make the show run very much more smoothly. But if not, that's okay, because I can talk about college basketball all night long. But with all that being said, though, where should we start? Let's start with the headliners, shall we? Texas A&M taking down number 1 Auburn as the headline and title of this show. And, I wouldn't call it an upset per se, because Texas A&M is a really good basketball team. With Wayne Taylor, what Buzz Williams has been able to do at Texas A&M, it's been really something marvelous to watch. Because there was a time period where Texas A&M was not a very good basketball team. They were more of a football school, but they've kind of transformed themselves and redone their image to kind of make themselves a football/basketball school. In some years where basketball is starting to outshine football. And it's kind of the thing with Auburn too. Bruce Pearl, Auburn's 27-3 now on the year and 15-2 in SEC play. Nothing to be ashamed of by any stretch of the imagination. Especially Johnny Broome, who him and Cooper Flagg are battling for Player of the Year. I mean, that's going to be a race to the very end. I mean, you've got a freshman phenom and you've got an experienced guy like Broome who's seen a lot and done a lot. I mean, it should be interesting. But to this game, though, I feel like it's a really good win for Texas A&M. But I kind of feel like Auburn was due for one of them. They had been really hot, been really winning. And, this is right before the Iron Bowl Part 2. Right before they play their big rival in Tuscaloosa. And you almost get the sense for Auburn, not that they were going to lose, but they weren't going to take this as serious. As crazy as that sounds, a top 25 team, a borderline top 15 team in Texas A&M, not take them seriously. But it was one of them things where it's right before rivalry week, playing Alabama, and Texas on the road on a Tuesday night. It was senior night for Texas A&M, and Wayne Taylor, Anderson Isaacs, and company for A&M played really good. The home court advantage absolutely played a major factor, a major role in it, and they just outplayed Auburn. They just outplayed them, and it happens. Like I said, Auburn was due for one, and Auburn's a really good team. By no stretch of the imagination is this, oh my gosh, Auburn's going to fall off the face of the earth. They're more than likely still going to be the 1 seed in the NCAA tournament because their resume is too good not to be. And by large and by far, according by all metrics and everything else, Auburn is the consensus number 1 team. I still even think a lot of people will have them at number 1 after this week going into the SEC tournament. And not to mention, too, Auburn won the SEC regular season championship this past weekend on Saturday. So as far as playing for the regular season title and the 1 seed, it kind of was all already locked up and clinched. And Auburn was just kind of, don't want to say messing with their food, but they kind of like, it, but, and that's the thing too. We get to this part of the year where teams begin to clinch, like Auburn and like some of these other teams have, where they don't take their games as seriously, especially in the SEC. There's a lot of really good teams in the SEC. Kentucky tonight dominated LSU in Rupp Arena, and LSU has been known to give teams a fit. They gave Tennessee a fit a couple weeks back, and they gave Auburn a couple fits. And it's one of them things in the SEC. The talent pool and level is so deep within the SEC conference. It's hard to win every game, but it's also there is chance for lack of complacency. And I feel like, kind of with this game, it's a really good win for Buzz Williams and Texas A&M. Like I said at the top, really good win. They should be proud of it. First time in history they've ever beaten a number one team in school history in basketball. Great win, and it helps their tournament seeding if there was ever a question, because I believe Lenardi has them as a 6 seed right now in the upcoming field. And as for Auburn, this game is just another one of they're 27-3, 15-2, and they're by consensus, like I said, probably still going to be the number one seed, and it's still going to be the team come March Madness. But there were some other interesting games out there tonight. North Carolina, on the bubble tonight. They've been on the bubble for quite a while now, but here they come. Here come the Tar Heels again. 19-11, playing some really good basketball, very undersized, but they're scoring at a high pace and they're learning to get pesky on defense. Hubert Davis, North Carolina's picking it up, and they got a big one coming this weekend at home against Duke. And many people believe North Carolina may still be, in the field if they beat Duke. And a lot of people think too, North Carolina, they've played awful, but they coming down the stretch, they've kind of played their way in. They're on the brink right now. And they've been playing like it. Their season comes down to playing Duke and beating Duke. Because if they beat Duke, I have no doubt in my mind they will find a way to put them in the field. Because it is North Carolina, it is a brand. And yes, you can say they've been beating up on bad teams, Florida State, Virginia Tech, Virginia. They've been beating up on all these bad teams. Of course, what do you expect? Well, North Carolina, if they would have done this a whole lot sooner, they wouldn't be in this position. So now they're trying to clean up their mess. So North Carolina, they got a really good win tonight. And R.J. Davis, Elliot Cadeau, they're finally starting to put it together. And some other bubble action. Indiana played Oregon tonight in Eugene. That was a heck of a game. Indiana, another team who's right there on the bubble as well. And it was a very tough, physical Big Ten-like game. And Mike Woodson, who announced he's leaving Indiana after this year, and his guys are still playing hard for him. They're 18-12, still right on the brink of the bubble. Their dreams aren't dead yet, but they're very, very slim. They needed a win big time tonight. And this could have been a win that could have propelled them possibly up a little more, because I believe they are currently, as we sit right now, on the right side of the bubble, I think. Yes, they're on the right side of the bubble. And Oregon, they're a very tough team to play. They're 22-8 now with this win over Indiana, 73-64. And Indiana lose by double digits doesn't help their case at all. If this was just a 1 or 2 point, maybe even a 5-point loss, you could make a real hard case. But the fact they lost by almost double digits, by 9, excuse me, now the committee is going to have to factor that in as well. And when you lose by double digits, even if you are a brand that is Indiana, the committee's still going to look at that and be like, well, you did beat Purdue and you did beat Michigan State. You did all get these very good wins, but you lost to double digits, and it's also where you lose at too. Kind of like college football, it's all about where you lose at, because Indiana has lost at very inopportune times, just kind of like North Carolina lost at very inopportune times. Not take it, won't say serious, but just not, kind of like with Mike Woodson not being able to scheme it up right and not getting his players in the right position. And I feel like that's been one of them things that I feel like it's hurt Indiana, not being able to scheme, Mike Woodson not being able to scheme it up right, not being able to get it going right, and I think it's really hurt them. And as for Dana Altman in Oregon, I don't want to just spend all this harping on Indiana, but Dana Altman in Oregon, the body of consistency at Oregon, and the team that they've had over the past couple of years, he's built this team, and I feel like a lot of people think, oh, these West Coast teams are coming into the Big Ten. How's this going to play out? How's this going to work? And they seem to adapt it really well, kind of like in football. And Oregon's one of them teams that they're built for this. They were always the physical team when they were in the Pac-12, if you think about it. And it's showed tonight, because there was times Indiana down the stretch got really flustered and got frustrated. There was a couple plays where they were hounding and harassing Galloway, Umar Ballo. I mean, and Oregon's defense was pesky tonight. And I feel like Indiana, like I said, going back to Mike Woodson not knowing how to scheme it up sometimes in these pressure situations, there was a couple times in this game where I was like, why? What's this play called, Mike Woodson? And it was just very not good. And it cost them the game, and then fouling with a little over 55 seconds to go. And it was just a whole lot of disaster after that. And then Indiana just kind of chucked up the shots, and there you go. And it cost them this game. But it was a good win for Oregon, though. They're 22-8 now, 11-8 in Big Ten play. Indiana falls to 19-12 on the season and 8-11 in Big Ten play, and thus hurts Indiana's chances to get one of the single byes. Because as the Big Ten, they're the only conference now. They're doing double and single byes, and the bottom three teams don't get a spot. They don't get a chance to play for it. They're the only conference that's doing that. But good win by Oregon, and good win and good win for Dana Altman. And I will gotta say this too. I forgot to mention this. I know I saw some tweets on X or Twitter. I like calling it Twitter, where some people thought the refs' favoritism in this game was a little bit egregious for Oregon. I'll say this. The refs sometimes, yes, they can play a deciding factor, but Indiana also down the stretch and also at times had very sloppy play, and so did Oregon. And I think it kind of ended up hurting Indiana more as the game progressed on and went on. But good win for Oregon and tough loss for Indiana. Another bubblicious game, Georgia, South Carolina. Well, not so much for South Carolina. I mean, South Carolina sitting at 11 wins on the year. 12 now. Sitting at 12-18. Georgia at 17-11, sitting right there. Georgia, the sleeping giant of the SEC, in my opinion. They've kind of stacked together some quietly good wins over Kentucky, over Oklahoma. They beat a top 5 Florida team at the time who had only lost 3 games up to that point. And here we go. And Georgia, who's typically known as a football school by all large and margins, but what they've been able to do in basketball this year now Georgia's 18-11. Excuse me, 19-11. Pardon me. Let me get this right. They're 19-11 overall, and Georgia playing their way into the NCAA tournament. And Georgia's one of the teams that sneaks up on you this year. And I feel like Georgia, they've got some really good players. I've watched a couple of their games this year, including tonight. Just shows you what I do on Tuesday nights. But anywho, but Georgia, a double-digit win on the road at South Carolina, and according to Joe Lunardi, if they just win one of their final two regular season games, they would more than likely be in the field of play. And they got a big one tonight in South Carolina. But they cannot rest on their laurels because, as we know, in this crazy world of college basketball, all it takes is one bid stealer, because by all brackets, Georgia is on the right side of the bubble. They're good to go. They just got to win one of the last two games, like I mentioned, from Lunardi and Katz, the experts of the field. But there's also the chance that it's just it's very sneaking feeling because Georgia's put together a really good resume. Like I said, beating Kentucky, beating Oklahoma, and now beating South Carolina, which that's not much of a feat this year. But in terms of what it is for their season, it's major, it's huge, and it's a really good win for Georgia, and it's a good win for for the program, and I hope they've done enough to make the NCAA tournament for their sake. And it'd be nice to see Georgia in the field. And as for South Carolina and Paris Lamont, it's been a rough year, after having their magical year last year, and them kind of just falling off into obscurity. And they kind of got the lighter end of the SEC schedule, and the SEC this year is a lot more tougher than it was last year. So, I still think Paris Lamont's a good coach. This is a good learning curve for him. But Georgia playing their way in bubblicious action, keeping their hopes alive. And some other action today. Today, Iowa State BYU. What a thrilling game that was with Iowa State coming away with the victory. Iowa State coming off that horrendous loss to Oklahoma State, a very bad Oklahoma State team, very pedestrian. Very pedestrian. And TJ Osselberger, what an awesome job he has done for this program. And he's got them playing. I got to say, he's got them playing. BYU, they're another team. They're top 25 in the country. They put together a really good resume. Tonight they took a blow with the loss on the road, but to a top 10 Iowa State team. So you can't fault them. I still think I don't think they should get punished for this loss. They lost to a very, very good Big 12 team. And a team I think could be a Final Four national championship team in Iowa State. I think they're that good. They're that good. But good win for Iowa State at home. Had to come back and win it, but they got it done. Creighton beat Seton Hall. Creighton did what they were supposed to do. And a lot of people left Creighton for dead. Look, like Pop Isaacs got injured for the year, and a lot of people left him for dead. They said, Creighton's not going to last. It's not going to end well. Well, here they are. Creighton silently have won over 21 games, kind of becoming, and that's what they do. Creighton's always that team. You think they're dead. They're not. They're always going to be there. And New Mexico getting a big win over Nevada. And Richard Pitino, what a fantastic job he's done as well. And another, Mountain West action, of course. And, New Mexico, they're another team that's on kind of the bubble. Could they get an at-large bid if they don't win the Mountain West tournament? It'll be fun to see there. And some of the other headlining games, of course, you had the thriller. Texas almost blew it tonight. But they were able to pull out the win in Starkville over top 25 Mississippi State. And Rodney Terry and them Longhorns keeping their season alive. And Mississippi State, another really good, solid team in the SEC, and another marquee win for the Longhorns. Is it enough for them to stay on the right side of the bubble? We'll have to see. But a very good win for the Longhorns. And I want to say this, too, before I get to my point. As I said, there's the call-in link in the chat. If y'all would like to call in, I'd really appreciate it. But if not, I'll continue rambling on. But this is what this platform is here for. Come talk to me about whatever you want to talk about. I'll accept any fans. I'll accept Indiana, Oregon, any fan base. We'll come talk college hoops. But that's the call-in link. If you want to call in, feel free to. I won't bite. But I got to say this. Rodney Terry, for a lot of people had Rodney Terry on a hot seat. And, a lot of that was from the team that he had a couple years ago. They made a magical run in the NCAA tournament, and it was one of the better Texas teams I think we've watched in a long time. But then he follows it up with a second-round loss to Tennessee last year, and he's kind of been on the snide, struggling, kind of hurting. And a lot of people are beginning to question, is Rodney Terry the right man for the job? Is this Kevin Ollie at UConn all over again? Because originally, this was Chris Beard's team. That was Chris Beard who constructed those teams, that team that went almost all the way. And a lot of people are kind of questioning, is Rodney Terry the right man? And they wanted to see, once he gets his players in, what is he going to be as a coach? Well, and this year they kind of struggled, but they've also had some really good games. Like tonight, that was a real big marquee win over number 25 Mississippi State. And it was kind of almost like a season-saving win. Because if they don't get this win, it could be very catastrophic. Because they're already shoving him out with pitchforks. And if he would have lost tonight, oh my goodness, it could have gotten real ugly. And the thing is too, they almost lost this game too. They were up by as many, I think, as 15 points. And Mississippi State took the lead, I think, with like 2 minutes left to go. This was almost a disastrous of a game for Texas. It was almost a game that they would have looked back and said we should have held on. But they held on in overtime, 87-85. And good for them because, like I said, it was a season-defining win. And if they didn't win, Lord have mercy, help Rodney Terry. And to kind of on the point, I'm all for giving a head coach 4 years. That's my max number. 3 to 4 years. Let's see where it goes after that. And this would be year 3 for Rodney Terry. So this would be right on my, of what I would give a coach. 3 or 4 years. Let them build a program and let them coach and let them do their thing. Let them go through their struggles. And for most part of Texas history, Shaka Smart, who was the Texas coach before he left for Marquette, he was the guy, that always had Texas consistency. The thing with Texas, they've always been consistent. They've always been the team that is consistent, makes the tournament. They're never really that team that you look at and go, bleh, they're never. They're always that team that is just good, sometimes have phenomenal years like they did under Shaka Smart and with Rodney Terry a couple years ago. And I'm all for Rodney Terry because I think he's a good coach. I personally think he is a good coach. I think he's got a place in Texas. And I think, being, rattled with the injury bug too. Texas has been injured a good part of their season as well. And I think it's really hurt them in large part, too, is why they've struggled a lot. And the SEC being such a gauntlet, a lot of coaches would struggle. And for Texas to get this win in Starkville and kind of possibly set up their fate where, and Clint Moses says UNC is back. Well, I'll say this, Clint. If UNC is back and they keep playing, like UNC, I don't think ever left Clint. Number one, but I appreciate you for being here, Clint. First off, manners. I but UNC never left. UNC just was they were messing with our food, as I like to say. But we'll have to see. Is UNC are they title contenders? We'll have to see. I mean, a lot can change. A lot can happen from now and then. I mean, believe it or not, not this coming Sunday, but 2 Sundays from now, we'll have a full bracket and we'll have all these answers. But back to my Rodney Terry point, though. I'm all for ACC hate been real since around 2020. Listen, Clint. I don't know why you hate the ACC. I mean, I don't know what they've done to you. I mean, I can understand it, but what has the ACC done to you, good pal? I mean, since around 2020, I'd like to know what they do to you in that time period. I mean, I understand Duke and North Carolina, the Blue Bloods. Like, I understand that. Like, I got you. The media hates ACC. My apologies. That's true. The media do kind of hate the ACC a little bit, especially in basketball. They more favor the Big 12, SEC. And here's the thing, too. What's crazy about it is for the longest time, the ACC was the best conference. Whether we liked to admit it or not, they were. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Louisville fan. Don't get it twisted, but there was a lot of teams, a lot of ACC teams that just were above and beyond everybody else. I mean, the year North Carolina won it, they were the best team. The year that they made 2016, the year prior, that was a really good team. 2019. So I see your point. The media hates the ACC. It's Duke, North Carolina, and then after that, it's kind of like okay, they'll throw in a little Clemson, a little Louisville, and I don't understand why. I get because the Blue Bloods, the status of Duke, UNC, and that's what the media wants us to think. But let's be honest here. Louisville, Syracuse, we're all just as good, if not at the standard of those teams as well. But I will say you're pretty spot on though, Clint Moses, with the ACC. Some people show up more than others, and I'll say this too, Clint Moses, too as well. Oregon State having a very quietly nice, good season for you as well. They beat Gonzaga a couple weeks ago. Very nice. Over 20 wins. Looking nice. I mean, Oregon State, they're a team, that kind of is, could be in more talks as well. And, Washington State, they've taken a big, hard fall back. Speaking of the Pac-2, I mean, let's show some love to them. Oregon State coming around. Oregon State basketball might be your jam. Washington State, they've just fallen off a cliff. My goodness, they started off the season really well too, and they lose into Portland State at Santa Clara. Oh my gosh, don't even get me started because I will go on and rant over that. Because you should not be losing to these teams, even if you are in the WCC. You are a better program than that. You are built better. But I digress. But back to my Rodney Terry point real fast is like I said, I think tonight was a job-saving win. And it was a win that was absolutely needed. And as for Mississippi State, this hurts their chances in the field of 68 in a couple weeks from now. But a big win for Texas, a saving win, and it's a win that they needed, and they got it in the big time. And some other games we want to touch on, since we bring up Duke and the media hates AC, give a shout out to Duke and Cooper Flagg dominating Wake Forest, possibly ending Wake Forest's dreams of any of any NCAA tournament bid possibly. I mean, in some other action, we had VCU winning tonight as well. Shout out to Will and D. Go Rams. West Virginia beating Utah by 2 in Salt Lake City. Utah, West Virginia, of a team that we beat back in Maui. That wind's starting to look better and better now. They're another program. They're in the bubble conversation. And after Bob Huggins, a lot of last year was not good by any stretch. But the fact that they've been able to pick it back up and be somewhat decent again, not have the massive turnaround like Louisville did, not to toot my own horn, but Pat Kelsey, no breaks. But in all seriousness, but for West Virginia to be close to 20 wins, kind of make themselves relevant again. And it makes, like I said, Louisville look good in a tough Big 12 after 1 year of being black. And believe it or not, Salt Lake City's a hard place to play, the altitude. So really good win for West Virginia tonight. Tonight as well, Virginia beat Syracuse in the ACC action. I mean, Virginia, they've kind of taken a big time tumble. Tony Bennett retired for the season. Syracuse, they've fallen off a cliff hard. I mean, the ACC this year has been down a whole lot, more than they normally have in years past. Syracuse, Virginia, Florida State, Virginia Tech, all playing very pedestrian. But Clemson, Louisville, Duke, all picking up the slack this year. And if you want to talk about it real fast, Louisville, look at the improvements we made in year one under Pat Kelsey. Like me personally as a fan, I was thinking 15 wins was the max. I was like, let's get 15 wins, have a good building year. But Pat Kelsey has brought us back to relevance in year one. We're within the top 15. We play Cal tomorrow. But I'm really happy with the way the team has done. But very, very happy and very proud of Pat Kelsey in year one, getting it done. Go Cards. But not to jump the horse, though. Not to jump the horse. We're not going to jump the horse here. But very proud and very happy for us. And Clint Moses asks, how many bids for the ACC into March Madness? Feel bad for the last team left out. Honestly, Clint, I'm looking at 4 right now for me personally. I'm looking at Duke, Clemson, Louisville, and North Carolina. I'm looking at 4. And then after that, I mean, you could have 5 with SMU. SMU could possibly get a spot because they're kind of like they're on the wrong side of the bubble according to Lenardi right now. But I would say 4 at max: Duke, Clemson, Louisville, Carolina. That would be And Carolina's questionable right now, in my opinion. There's 3 guaranteed, but 4 would be my guess. And that's the thing about the ACC this year, Clint, is they're down bad. Like normally ACC is a 6 to 8 bid league. This year they might be lucky to get 4, and that's being honest. And like you said, feel bad for the last team left down. I do too. Like especially SMU, because them and Carolina are the 2 like I'm kind of teeter-tottering on. Like I said, I got 3 for sure, and then 3 for sure, and then 2 possibles. Like I would feel bad for SMU, especially because getting thrust into a new conference, and they play really well too. I'm like, not a lot of people watch SMU, but they're a good basketball team. Andy Enfield's got SMU playing some good basketball, and for a good part of the year, they were playing really well, and and they have some quality wins under their belt. They're not completely pedestrian. I mean, the problem with them is their resume is lacking. That's where I'm kind of like, they have the win total, but they don't have, with the ACC being down, it's it's like, who do you have on your resume? And that's what we're going to see a lot of. Now, in the Big 12 SEC, they don't got to worry about that. The Big 10, to a certain extent, it's like the Mountain West, the ACC. Those are the conferences that are like, who you got on your resume? Who have you beaten? I don't care that you've won 25 games. Who have you played? Who have you won against? And that's where it kind of comes for me like, okay, like you said, I feel bad for, the last team that's going to get left out. I always feel bad, especially if they play really hard too. And like North Carolina, like I said, they're making a late push, but it may not be enough because the damage may be already done. They may not qualify. And I know some people may say, well, it's North Carolina, they're the brand. You have to give them the spot. Not necessarily. You don't necessarily have to give North Carolina anything. I mean, yeah, like I said, North Carolina's playing hot. They're playing good. They're fine. They're not very big size wise. They're playing very small ballish, but they're finding ways to get wins and get it going. And but the problem is though, it may be too little, too late, and it may have cost them their season. I mean, like I said, they've got Duke this Saturday. They win that game, I think they'll be 90% in the field. And that may be a hot take, but for me, if they beat Duke Saturday, they may need to win one ACC tournament game, maybe one. Now, obviously, if they beat Duke and win two ACC tournament games, they're in the field. I don't think there's any questions about it. And that's one of the things, too. I'm like, here's the thing. And like I said, I feel bad for the teams that are 24, 25 wins. The thing that bothers me is a brand team like North Carolina can play so bad but play so great towards the end that the team that they jump is a team that actually deserves it, that actually earned it. And that's where I'm kind of like, okay, I get it. It's a cutthroat business, and what drives everything in this world? Money. They see North Carolina, and they're like, North Carolina is going to get us ratings. North Carolina is going to they're going to bring us ratings, and they're good for the sport. But the problem is with that is we also have to take into play what are we playing these games for if they do not matter? Especially if you're in a pedestrian conference. My gosh. And I got to say this too, and like I posted again in the chat, the StreamYard link if you want to come in and talk as well. And we'll talk about anything you want. Like I said, this is what this is here for as well. So you come on in, talk as well. Put the StreamYard link in there for you. It's free to everybody. And I'll take any fan base. Doesn't matter. And whatever you want to talk about, we'll talk about. This is college basketball and chill, going over the week's games and kind of looking back on the week. And Corey Smith is here. What's up, Corey? Welcome to college basketball and chill. And he says USC is 1-10 in quad one games. They don't have the record. Yes, and that's another thing that irritates me, Corey. I agree with you. They're 1-10 in these quad one games. But the problem is though, they're North Carolina. And they're playing good down the stretch. And the committee is going to look at that. And all it takes is them to beat Duke. That's the problem with me, Corey, is I don't think one win over Duke. And like you said, the 1-10 in quad one games, I don't think you should overlook that because they're North Carolina. They should absolutely take that in consideration. But the thing is, if they beat Duke, they're going to look at, oh, you beat Cooper Flagg. You beat a really hot Duke team, the Duke team who might win the regular season title in the ACC. But you look at North Carolina, 1-10 in quad one games, and like you said, they don't have the record. They're currently 19-11. They beat Duke, they'll be 20-11. Like I said, if they happen to win one more game after Duke in the ACC tournament, that may be enough for the committee to be like, okay, we can put them in there. And Corey Smith says that he would have to win against Duke and make a run in the tournament. Not happening. Well, and that's the thing too. Could they beat Duke? It's a rivalry game. I'm not going to throw it out. Absolutely not. Make a run in the tournament. I mean, and Corey Smith says Duke is going to stomp them. Well, here's the problem. I don't disagree with you, but it is North Carolina Duke. And North Carolina and Duke always bring their best stuff for this game. If it would not surprise me if this game goes down to a buzzer beater. Would not surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me if Carolina wins this game. And I'm being all sincere with that. Like, I know you believe Duke's going to stomp them, but it would not surprise me if Carolina wins. And you said they had to make a run in their tournament, not happening. Well, the thing is, the ACC's they're down this year. North Carolina could very much make a run. And the way they're slotted on the ACC side of the bracket, they're on Louisville's side of the bracket with Clemson and company, and they could very well beat us, Louisville, and beat Clemson. So I wouldn't put it past it. I'm not counting North Carolina out yet, not by any chance. As much as people want them to go away, they're not going to go away. It's not going to happen. They won't let it happen. Even though I agree with you, Corey Smith, and I agree with all the people that are against North Carolina getting in. And he says, have a good one. Good luck with your show. Thank you. Thank you very much. And he said, and that's what I'm against. But I will say this, though. And looking at some of the other teams possibly in the bubble field, you got Indiana. They've got 2 top 25 wins over Michigan State and Purdue. How come we're not considering, like them? Why aren't they getting the recognition that North Carolina's getting? And I'm not trying to turn this into a debate for North Carolina. Absolutely not. Try not to do that. But when it's one of them things, it's very interesting to say the least. But I'll say this too. And you look down the field. You got Ohio State. They're kind of on the bubble. They lost a tight one to Nebraska tonight in overtime. You had Villanova. Georgetown with the 75-73 upset over Villanova at home. And Villanova, their slim hopes were hanging on in the balance tonight. Theirs probably ended. All the good that they've done is probably gone. And, you look down this row of bubble teams and fields and, obviously we could debate a lot of things. But I'll say this too. Another interesting topic to bring up is the 1 seeds. We're talking about the bubblicious and making cases for everybody. Who does everybody think the 1 seeds are right now? I personally think the 1 seeds will be Auburn, Duke, Houston, and Tennessee would be my 4 right now. I don't know if y'all would disagree with me or if you think I'm nuts, but those would be the ones I think that have the best chance to be the 1 seeds, in my opinion. But, and here's the thing, I think Auburn far and away, I think they're the safest 1 seed out of anybody. I don't think you could challenge them. But you can make a case Alabama should be a 1 seed in the tournament. You can make a case Florida still has a very slight chance. I think Houston, they played their way to a 1 seed. They have Houston, Kelvin Sampson, year 1 in the Big 12. What a magnificent year he's having after starting the season rough. They're now over 23 plus wins. Won a share of the regular season title in year 1 in the Big 12 conference. You can't help but applaud that man for what he's done. I think they've earned the right to be a 1 seed. Duke, they've been on fire. Cooper Flagg, Tyrese Proctor, John Shire has picked up right where Coach Zeski left off. They're in line for a 1 seed. Tennessee, Rick Barnes, replaced a lot of talent. And they've had some games where you're like, but they kept it together. The LSU game comes to mind a couple weeks ago. That was one that they almost lost, but they kept together. Right, and you can make a case for Alabama, but like for me, it's Duke, Tennessee, Houston, Auburn. That would be my four, and then after that, you can maybe throw Alabama, possibly Bama sneaking in there, possibly being a 1 seed in the tournament. You can make a case for Michigan State, but it, it's all very interesting. It's all very. It's this time of year in March Madness where we can have this conversation all night long of who should be the 1 seeds, who has done what, and who hasn't. And it's very interesting. It's very telling. And like I said, that for me would be my 4 1 seeds, And, I look around, I could make a case. You could throw, a couple other teams in this conversation. You know, you know, we haven't talked about it yet, but talk about Kansas. They look mortal. Like Kansas getting blown out by Texas Tech. Has Bill Self lost his touch? How far is Kansas going to fall? Is Kansas still going to be a top 5 seed? You know, Texas Tech, are they a top 3 seed in this tournament field? Are they a team to be reckoned with? After losing Pop Isaac to Creighton, that was a big loss for the Red Raiders, but they've replaced it and they've gotten even better. But to Kansas, Hunter Dickinson, arguably, he transferred from Michigan, came to Kansas. And, KJ Adams, Kansas is constructed as a really good team, but they're just not playing like it. Like I said, has Bill Self lost his touch? Because this is not the Kansas I grew up with. This is not the Kansas that I know and love. The Kansas that even after losing 1 or 2 games would bounce back. Last year they were injury riddled, and Bill Self made a comment in the press conference. He was like, we kind of wanted to get this season over, yada, 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 yada. Well, and they seem to have gotten no better. They've been blown out a couple different times. Houston, Texas Tech, just bad loss after bad loss. And they're playing these teams that they shouldn't be. Teams that they know better than to play close against. But here we are. And it begs the question, and for everyone in the audience, has Bill Self lost his touch? What has happened to Kansas? I mean, and where would you all see Kansas as the audience? What seed would you give Kansas for the tournament? I mean, is Kansas still a top 5 seed, or have they taken a dip off? And if you want to come talk about it, here's the StreamYard link. Come on in, we talk about it, and you can give me your opinion on it if you want. I'm all ears. If you want to come talk to me about it, the StreamYard link, we come chat about it. Another team that you can make a strong, that case for that deserves more credit than they're getting. But St. John's, they're doing fantastic. Rick Pitino in year 3. Look at the jumps he's made in year 3 at UConn. At St. John's, pardon me. Want to share the regular season title. Could St. John's possibly be a top 3, top 2 seed in the tournament? We talk about losing touch. Well, UConn, they've lost a lot of production from their championship teams. Have they? They've lost a step. From going from Maui and losing those 3 straight games. Like, here we are. UConn's projected to be a 7th seed. The defending national champs are projected to be a 7th seed, according to Lenardi and Cass. And Aiden Bohaney, who transferred from St. Mary's, wanted to play for a winner, wanted to play for UConn. And they haven't been able to gel as well. They're playing a lot of these pedestrian teams. And, to my point, though, a lot of the teams that we grew up on as dominants, like Bill Self in Kansas and Dan Hurley in UConn, last couple of years, we've been used to them blowing teams out. And here, and that's the thing too. There's so much parity in college basketball. Where you get the Michigans, who Dusty May has done a fantastic job. You've gotten the Michigans. You've got a lot. Louisville's back up on the track. Brad Brownell and Clemson, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. You've got a lot of parity, and it makes for a fun time in March. And like I said, a lot of these results this year, have I won't say been wonky, but not what we're used to seeing. And there's a world now where the SEC has surpassed the Big 12. For the longest time, the Big 12 was the best conference. But the SEC has taken that mantle, in my opinion, for at least this year. And it's shown throughout play. And teams that have been pedestrian, teams that have been, the SEC has normally been a really great conference. A 5-6 league bid. There's a world where the SEC could get 12 teams in the tournament if they really wanted to push it. Where that used to be the Big 12. And but to kind of wrangle it all back together, has Bill Self lost his touch? I don't know. Be quite honest with you. I mean, I know the college basketball world has changed, like I've said multiple times. And Kansas has got some really good players, like I said, Hunter Dickinson, KJ Adams, the two leaders of the team. And thing is, Kansas stylistically, they used to be the toughest out. Fog Allen, like wasn't that long ago, Fog Allen used to be one of the home court advantages, best home court advantages you could ever get. Now teams are going in there and playing Kansas and beating them. And it's teams that shouldn't even be on their level. And they're losing to them. And in a roundabout way, I kind of did answer my question. Has Bill Self lost it? Maybe a little bit. Maybe the time has changed on him. And maybe the stylistic play that he likes ain't there anymore. Maybe it's not it. I don't know what, like Bill Self, when it's all said and done, like he's a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest coaches that ever lived, in my opinion. Maybe it's time for him to move on from Kansas, because Kansas is one of those things where if they're a blue blood in a lot of people's eyes, a perennial blue blooded Final Four, a national champion contender, and they're not playing like it the last couple of years. They've been hit with injuries. They're just getting blown off the floor more than we've ever seen before. And maybe that's part of it due to the conference growing and competition getting better, and the competition taking a step up, taking a notch to the next level. But normally Bill Self, even in years past, has been able to bring himself back, been able to put Kansas, they've had one or two bad games and then they snap out of it. Now it seems like they have one bad game, then they have another, and then they have another. And it don't ever seem to be getting fixed. But like I said in the chat, you all let me know. Let me hear you. Do you think Bill Self has lost his touch? Or do you think I'm overreacting and Kansas will be fine? And like I said, too, here's a StreamYard link if you would like to call in. If nobody wants to call in, that's cool, too. Going to wrap it up here in a few minutes. Minutes if no one wants to call in. Because I'm sure y'all get tired of me rambling. But if nobody... But let me hear it, though. Has Bill Self lost it? Has he not? We'll have to see. And we've got our first caller of the night, and he's a very loyal caller. And he's a Kentucky and a voice of college football legend. It's Darrell MVP. Welcome on, Darrell.
Hey, how are you doing, Austin?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Today was a great day of college basketball. I very surprised with how well the bubble teams did in general today. Normally they lose every time they go out there, or most of the times they go out there, but today most of them won. So, it's finally nice to see the bubble strengthen up a bit.
Yeah, and congratulations on a nice win for Kentucky tonight, like I mentioned earlier, over LSU.
Yeah, they're not good. They're just flatly not a good team. I mean, it didn't look like they were putting much effort into it. It felt like they understood after the first few shots didn't go in that the game was kind of over. So, there's not a whole lot more reason to complain on because the season's a failure.
Well, and I'll say this too, Darrell. It was a game y'all needed too. In all
Yeah,
seriousness, I know we like to tug each other about Louisville, Kentucky, but in all seriousness, that was a game y'all needed to win. Yeah, a
yeah,
good bounce back game.
yeah, it's nice. I mean, losing to them would open up a lot of questions about where we're just going in general. Similar to how I felt during the Texas loss, because there's just some teams, even with Jackson Robinson out, you shouldn't lose to, and LSU is definitely in that classification.
hmm Well, and I got to say this too, Darrell. They gave Tennessee a really good game a couple weeks back, if you remember. And LSU, even though they play bad a lot of times, they played some really good teams and played them really tough. So
Yeah, I know, but I
I
just
did.
think it's a product of eventually, if you do something enough times, eventually, just random chance you're going to be making your baskets. I think that's what's happening with teams like South Carolina and
hmm
LSU. I mean, it's difficult to go like have two, three, four, five, 6 wins throughout the course of the season. It's hard to do that because
hmm
you just think statistically, you do something over a long enough period of time, you'll just happen to get lucky and win a few games. But LSU is definitely not in that. They've only won 3 SEC games, and they're just not good. I mean, they're just flatly not good. I know Jeffrey. You were talking about Indiana earlier. He was salty about the Oregon game. Hey, don't let. I mean, Oregon hit a massive shot, a 30-foot dagger. It's not Indiana's fault that shot, or the ref's fault that shot went in.
Listen, Darrell, we love Jeffrey, and he does fantastic work on his channel and at the Voice of College Football. But here's the thing, Darrell. I think he's just frustrated with Indiana altogether, which is understandable. Very understandable. But like you said, it's not the ref's fault that Oregon made probably the toughest shot of the game from that far out.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I was going to ask you before we went into the basketball, but I just got so hyped. Where's your co-host Jackson today? Is he doing well?
Jackson is doing fine. He's Jackson's recovering from his loss from his dog Bear,
Oh
as he
yeah, I
posted
saw
on his
that. Thoughts are
Twitter.
with him.
Yes, so he's taking a break, and I'm went solo tonight. So I'm here, and I'm glad you called in, Darrell, because it's always a great conversation. And there's a lot of things that I can talk with you about because you're very reasonable, as most people know.
Well, I appreciate that. Let me ask you about this. There's the Ohio State Nebraska game to me was the most important result of today. Yeah, I think that was a double bubble matchup. Great game, double overtime, 2 point victory, high scoring game. But I just it's hard to stomach a 13 loss team at this point in the season being in the field. Like it's if they were 20-13, I might be okay with that. But they're what 18-13 or 17-13. I mean, at some point you just gotta win games. Like I like teams who win games. Like I know I'm a guy who believes in the best record, but I believe there's some where the best teams belong in. But I believe there should be some nuance in this as well. I mean, I don't want to see a 500 level team that happen to get in the tournament. What are your thoughts?
So I'll say this, Darrell. There's some cases where if your resume is like off the charts good, but you stumble down the stretch, I think you can make a real good case. But like you said though, it's really hard though. Like like you said, a 12-13 loss team. It's hard to make a case though, unless they have that resume that backs it up, like Nebraska and Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State had that big win over Purdue, but other than that, what else can we say for them? Same with
They beat
Nebraska.
Kentucky as
They
well.
Yes, there's a couple teams that are like that. You're like, okay, Kentucky, they're in the SEC. Like, even if they loaded their non-con up with cupcakes in conference play, they're going to play the Alabamas, the Floridas. They're going to get their chances. But it's when you load your non-con up, but then you're in a bad conference like the ACC. And yes, I'm going to rag on the ACC for a second. If that's why I'm so against North Carolina being in Real, because they're 1-10 in quad one victories, and it's the fact that they're North Carolina. That's where I'm at. Just because you're a brand doesn't always mean that's where I have a hard time at. I don't know if you disagree or not,
Well,
but
they
that's
play
where I'm
Duke.
kind of at.
They play
Yes.
Duke, so we'll figure if they beat Duke, then they should be in. If they don't beat Duke, then they probably should be out. But this year's bubble, man, is just so weak in general that eventually, you just gotta pick somebody. I was listening to the Field of 68, and I completely agree with one of the sentiments. I was like, I'm hoping for bid thieves this year. That way, some of these crap teams just don't get in. Like, there's just some
Mm-hmm.
disgusting options. Like Wake Forest, I'm hearing like people talk about them being on the bubble still. How are they on the bubble? They haven't beaten anyone with a pulse. Like the top three
Mm-hmm.
ACC teams they've played, Duke, Clemson, and Louisville, they've been down at least 20 in every single one of those games. And they've been down
Mm-hmm.
30 against Duke and Louisville. They haven't even been competitive. So
Mm-hmm. And
it's
that
just disgusting and gross that they're even on the bubble, in my opinion. Like, it's just, oh my goodness.
here's the thing, Daryl. I think Wake Forest, even though they're sitting at 20 wins, I'm with you. That they're not showing why they want to be in the tournament. They keep getting big chances and they keep losing it. So
It's
why
not
are we
just
going to
it's
reward
how they're
them?
losing as well. They're losing big.
Yes. Well, like I said too, like I mentioned earlier, Daryl, it's all about when and how you lose and where you're at towards the end. Like the only reason why North Carolina is getting any conversation right now, along with Indiana, is because they're playing really good down the stretch. That's like if they would have done this at the beginning, that might have silenced any conversation we would have had about them. But the fact that they're playing good now, but it may be too little, too late. And like you said for Wake, wrangling it back to them, it's how they're losing now.
Right. I saw Arkansas won today as well. That's a big win for them because, they're on the bubble. So any win for Arkansas is a big win at this point in the season. Georgia won
Mm-hmm.
today. Texas won today. Arkansas won today. 13
I
SEC
mean,
teams is looking likely at this point. I hate to say it, but the problem is everyone else is just losing and these teams are winning.
well, and I agree with you, Dario. Listen, the SEC, you could make a case for just about the whole entire conference. Like, I know we joke and kid, but you really can. You can make a case for just about almost everybody except for your bottom dwellers, LSU, South Carolina. But you can make a case for Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Florida, Alabama, Auburn. You can make a case for all of them to be in the tournament.
Right. I mean, Auburn's so good they lost today, and I don't think it impacts them at all. Like, I think they were the number one overall seed entering today. I still think comfortably the number one overall seed today. They're just, first off, they lost to a good team on the road. Texas A&M's a quad one opponent on the road, and Auburn just got so much in the bank compared to literally everyone else in the country that it's not even really close. They had the fortunate role of playing one of the most difficult non-conference schedules. They beat Iowa State, they beat Michigan State and Memphis, and they've just been dominating the SEC. So they've got, 14, 15 quad one wins, something like that? It's just
Yeah.
insane the amount of quad one wins. I mean, I saw Joe Lenardi's bracketologist, and he's like, Auburn could forfeit the remainder of their games and they'd still be a quad one. And I mean, I can't really disagree with them because they just got that much of a gap. I think, honestly, if they beat Bama, there's no way they can't be the number one seed. I mean, they could lose to even South Carolina the next game. Now, I know they're not probably going to play them, but they could lose to that level of team and still be the number one overall seed. They're just so much better than everyone else this year. It's insane.
And it kind of goes to my point, Darrell, that before you called in, I was naming off the one seeds that I think could possibly be in. And Auburn, for me, was a lock 100%. I don't think they can do anything right. Even after tonight, like you said, they lost to a really good Texas A&M team. It's not like Texas A&M was that bad. Like I said, they've got some good players. Wayne Taylor, I like him. Anderson Isaacs, I think he's good. So to me, it doesn't hurt them at all. And like you said, when you play a non-con like they did and just loaded up and won all those games, it's kind of hard not to give them the one seed. Like you said, they could lose South Carolina and we could get the field of 68 tomorrow and they'll still be the one seed. It's hard not to give it to them. They've just got so much stored away in the bank.
Right. For me, the one seeds as of right now is Auburn, Duke, Houston, Alabama. I think those are the 4 one seeds right now, in my opinion. There's an argument for Bama, Tennessee, or Florida. What are your ones?
So, Darrell, we actually agree more than you think, except on one. I have Auburn, Tennessee, Duke, Houston. I flipped with you. I have Tennessee.
Okay. I mean, that's very reasonable. I mean, they did just win head-to-head. But the beautiful thing is we're going to find out this week if Alabama's a one seed because they play Florida and Auburn. Even if they probably just split those 2 games, they will probably be a one seed because Tennessee, I don't believe, plays anybody as good as those 2 teams. Well, they can't play anybody as good as those 2 teams. Those are 2 of the 3 best teams on the SEC outside of Alabama. But no, they only play they've only got Ole Miss and South Carolina left on their schedule. So even if they go 2-0, they don't control their fate. I believe Alabama 1-1 would surpass them just because of that quality of win. Because it's not just who they're beating, but they're beating one of the 5 best teams in the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to say this, Darrell. Like, I think we could both agree. We could both be reasonable and say Auburn's probably a lock for the one seed. I think Houston, I think they're 95% a lock for the one seed, even if they don't win the Big 12. The only 2 I'm not sold on is Duke and Tennessee. I think you can make like I said, I think you can make a real good argument, Darrell, for Michigan State to sneak in as a one seed. And like, am I too crazy to think that?
I don't know. I'm looking at Duke's resume right now. They've got the second best net in the country. Number 1 KenPom, number 1 BPI. Okay. So their numbers are like their predictive measurements are just gushing with gold. They're quad 1. They're 6-3. That's not good, but that's not bad. They just got no bad losses. The worst team they've lost to this year was Clemson by 6 points. Well, also, their losses are close losses. Their biggest margin of defeat was that 6-point loss to Clemson. So,
and then that's the thing too, Darrell. Like I know the SEC is probably going to have 2 one seeds, whether we like it or not. Like I've come to the conclusion the SEC is going to get 2 one seeds. It's just for me, like you said, it's between Tennessee, Alabama, and Florida. The problem with Florida's argument, Darrell, and you can probably understand this, is they lost to Georgia, who's a bubble team. Whereas it's like your case is kind of hurting now. But if Georgia makes the tournament, I don't know, because like Florida's one of them for me, Darrell. Like I just don't know, especially some of the games that they've lost and the way they played in some of their games.
I like the Georgia game is probably the best example of it overall of what you're talking about. They also have 4 losses, which could matter, but they've lost to Tennessee on the road. They've had 3 road losses in Georgia, Kentucky, and Tennessee, and they have a home loss to Missouri by 1. They're currently, let's see here, they are 6-4 in quad 1, so they're not quite as good as Duke. but they also don't have any bad losses. 14-1. I mean, it's close between them, but they did play North Carolina in non-conference, Arizona State, Wake, so they have went out there and challenged themselves in non-conference somewhat. Let's see who they play. Yeah, they play Alabama.
Yeah.
I mean, if they beat Alabama, they're going to probably be a 1 seed.
Well, that's the thing too, Daryl. Well, that's the thing too. The glorious part about being in the SEC is you get to play the best of the best, and
Right.
the fact that they get to play Alabama this late in the year, wonderful. Because now it's like obviously it's fun to talk about it, but we're gonna see it tomorrow. We're gonna see it play out in front of our eyes. Who is gonna take the 1 seed?
Right.
And
it's also,
call me
if Florida
crazy.
wins, it's a road win, which is a massive road win. It's
Yes.
probably one of the best wins of all the entire season, considering it's on the road. So I think, honestly, you can make an argument the winner of that game is a 1 seed, barring something disastrous happening in the SEC tournament, like an injured player or early exit.
Yes. You can make a case, Daryl, I think, for like in the SEC, like you said, 3 different teams, like we've mentioned. I feel like this year, Daryl, and you may disagree with me, but I feel like like in years past, we've had teams where I feel like it's very slim at the top of the mountain of teams who can win. Like right now, I have 5 teams I think that can win the whole thing, and if you would like to hear them, I could list them off for you.
No, I think I've got a good idea who they are, and I think we largely agree based on the conversation we're having.
Okay, so you agree with me? Okay,
yes,
because I was talking to some friends of mine and coworkers, and they disagree with my sentiment on that. They think this is the most open it's been in a long time.
No, gosh, no. Like to me, it's a tier of Auburn, Duke by themselves, and then you've got this like championship threat tier of Alabama, Florida, Houston, and then just below that is Tennessee, and then there's a massive gap between those quadrants of teams and then number 7. But I would not be surprised if Alabama and Duke, I mean, not Alabama, Auburn and Duke met in the national championship game. It's kind of got this feel this year. If anything, I compare it more to last year, where UConn and Purdue were just the titans of the sport last year, and that, they were clearly the best 2 teams in the tournament, weren't even really challenged in any of their games, and then they met in the championship. And unfortunately, even within the best 2 teams, one of those teams is way better than the other one. But I don't see how Duke or Auburn lose before the Elite 8. Like, I just don't even see how that's possible, because they're going to play a 16, and then they're going to play an 8 or 9 seed. Maybe if the 8 or 9 seed is a Gonzaga or UConn, it can give them some struggles for a half. Or a Kansas, maybe, because they're talented, but still, Auburn and Duke are just loaded this year. They've just been way more consistent than those teams. I just don't see how they lose before the Elite 8. That's just my opinion.
No, I'm with you, Daryl. I'm not going to disagree with you at all on that, Daryl. Like, if you were to tell me Auburn Duke is going to play for the national title this year, I wouldn't bat an eye at it. It's just that good. And the thing is, too, they've got the 2 best players in the country today in John A. Broome and Cooper Flagg. And here's the case. Daryl, I don't know how caught up you get in Player of the Year awards in college basketball, but you can make a case for either one of those 2 guys to win, and I don't think you could pick a wrong winner. And like, what do you think of that, Daryl? Like,
I agree
when
with
it comes
that
to those
sentiment.
type things.
They're the 2 best players in the country, clearly. For me, I believe Cooper Flagg is the best player in the country. I believe he should win the award because his value to Duke is much more, in my opinion, than what Janai Broome is to Auburn. Like, I think if you remove Janai Broome for Auburn, they would still be a 12-4 SEC team type team. I think they're a top half SEC team. You remove Cooper Flagg from Duke, Like, I know Tyrese Proctor's pretty good, but outside of that, they don't have that one player. They don't have a third option. Where it's just with Auburn, it's just wave after wave of consistency. And so, to me, that's the separator. Is I think Flag does more for them, similar to how in the where I believe the MVP of the NBA this year is going to go to SGA just because of how much he does for the Thunder. Like, he just does so much for them that if you removed SGA from the Thunder, they're maybe a play-in, like just slightly above a play-in team. Honestly, a 7 or 6 seed. Like, he's clearly the main force behind that team and why they're so good. And that's what the exact same feeling I have on Cooper Flag. Like, without him, I don't think Duke is winning the ACC without Cooper Flag. Like, I think they're probably third just because of how badly the ACC is this year, but I think they're losing way more than one game. They probably lose 3 or 4 games without Cooper Flag. He just does so much for them. That's just my opinion, though.
And Darrell, I'm glad you bring up how bad the ACC is, because Clint Moses asked this earlier. But since you're here now, I want to get your opinion on it, see if we align or not. He asked how many bids for the ACC into March Madness. Feel bad for the last team left out. I have 3 guaranteed, and I have 2 bubble teams. If you'd like to hear mine first before you give yours.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've got Clemson, Louisville, Duke as the 3 locks. I've got Carolina and SMU as the bubble teams that could possibly make a spot in the tournament.
So you don't even have Wake Forest as a bubble team?
No. They've done nothing to impress me, Darrell.
Oh, they don't impress me. They don't pass the eye test. Hunter Salas is a good player for Wake Forest, but he's just a good player. Like, I don't think he's even a great player. I think he's just a good player on a very average or mid team. But I'm looking at the comparison between SMU and North Carolina. I think the reason North Carolina is so high is just those predictive metrics. Like, their KenPom is about the same, but the BPI is 37. Their torque ranking goes to Carolina. Strength of schedule, North Carolina. KPI, easily North Carolina. Wins above bubble, slightly higher for North Carolina. So I think they would choose North Carolina above SMU, even between those teams, as much as I hate saying it, because, they are 1-10 in quad 1, but SMU is a disgusting 0-5. I mean, you never like to see the goose egg in the Q1 column. And also, they've got 3 losses in quad 2, whereas North Carolina has 0. But North Carolina, in fairness, did lose that game to Boston College, I believe it was, which how they lost to that game to Boston College, because Boston College is a bad team. They're just terrible. Like, I don't even think they're making the ACC tournament. That's how bad of a team they are this year, which is pathetic. To miss when you're in 18 field to miss when you're fighting for a 15-team field, you're missing it because you're the 16th, 17th, or 18th best team. But I agree with your assessment. I think the ACC, we could have a bid thief out of it. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these teams get hot. Like Georgia Tech, for example, is a good case of this. They beat Louisville, and then they went on the road to beat Clemson. I mean, those would be. I mean, if they're willing to do that, I mean, I don't think the gap between all it just takes is just to get hot at the right time. So,
and the thing is too, Darrell, is last year we had a lot of bid thieves, and the thing is too, I love bid thieves, right? Because it makes the sport great, especially NC State. They went on the Cinderella run, and look at them now, very pedestrian. They've taken a fall from grace, and Kevin Keats, Darrell. He was on the hot seat last year before he went on that run. A lot of people were ready to throw him out of town. But now he's got the grace of last year, so they're not getting on him as hard. And the thing, too, is I notice, too, every now and then you'll have a bid thief. But do you ever think, Darrell, do you think we'll have as many bid thieves as we did last year for this year?
No, last year was a historical year for bid thieves. Like, the 10 seeds were the first 4 in last year. Normally, it's the 11 seeds. So I think we're going to have less bid thieves than usual. Like, even in some of these conferences, just the resume for these G5 teams is so weak that I feel like they're one bid leagues almost no matter what. There's a few exceptions out there, like the A10, VCU, for
Mountain
example.
West.
Mountain West, depending on who it is. I mean, even with the bubble being so bad, Boise State is a bubble team. So I don't know, depending on the committee's thinking, I don't know if they're a quote unquote bid thief or not. Now, Colorado State, on the other hand, or Nevada, if they win it, they definitely are a bid thief. They're out. The Big East is another one we can look at. Xavier, Villanova, their bubble basically, I believe, popped tonight with losing to Georgetown. I don't see how 18 and 12, 18 and 13 Big East team gets in. Big East clearly the fifth best conference this year, in my opinion. I don't think it's even that close to argue. Yeah, they're 18 to 13. I don't see them getting in. But they could go on a heater and win the Big East tournament. I don't think the gap Big East is as large as disparity as the other conferences. So to answer a long way to answer your question, I don't think we're going to see nearly as many big thieves. Oh, final conference I'll mention is the AAC. Memphis, and Memphis is the only lock for sure because they beat UConn, they beat Michigan State, and they lost to Auburn. No shame in losing to Auburn. They're in no matter what. So North Texas can win that league. I wouldn't be shocked. So we could have a few bid thieves, but I don't think it's going to be. I think probably around 5 or 6 is what we'll see this year. About to take a guess.
Well, and that's the thing too, Daryl. The thing I've noticed too, it's always the ones you least expect, right? And that's the point of the bid thief, right? But some of them were like, we almost had Temple last year, who was 6-22 going into the conference tournament.
Speaking of that, can we get a moment of thoughts for Doug Gottlieb in Green Bay? They got officially eliminated today, I saw, from March Madness.
Oh, yes. A moment of silence. Okay.
Austin, I know what. Can I ask you, since you're a Louisville fan, what is it like to win only like 4 games a season? What is that like?
Daryl, honestly, that's not fun. It's hard to watch, but I watched every single game like I thought we had a chance. And
is it embarrassing that your coach did as good as a commentator? Like Doug Gottlieb was a commentator before this, and he won 4 games. And a much lesser program.
I'm just glad, I'm always Daryl. The thing was, I like I said earlier with Rodney Terry, I was like, give him 3 or 4 years before you pass judgment. But after year 2 with Kenny Payne, I was like, okay, I know I'm breaking my own rule, but this is bad. Nobody wants to play. Our building is empty. One of the best environments in the sport, it's dead. And I'm like, okay, get rid of him now. Like, normally I don't like to do that. I don't like to be hasty, but he needed to be gone. He was sucking the life out of the place.
I'm sure
and now he's jumped out there.
School was happy if he would have been extended. I would have been celebrating like, sweet, we got a few more guaranteed wins on our schedule. They kept him around.
You're like, okay.
I mean, he seemed like a good person. He's at Arkansas now with John Calipari, but he doesn't know. God bless him, but he doesn't know what he's doing. He has no idea what he's doing at all, and that's fine. Not everybody in life is made out to be a head coach, You're plenty of wingman out there. I mean, every pilot needs a good co-pilot, so.
Yes. And listen, and that's the thing too, Daryl. Like what Pat Kelsey's been able to do in year 1, and try not to wear the red sunglasses here, but I think he's the coach of the year, and I don't think it's an argument.
I agree. I've been arguing that on Twitter. I've been saying that, screaming it from the mountaintops on there, saying Pat Kelsey is the coach of the year. Like, I will die on this proverbial hill, not literally, but metaphorically die on this hill that Pat Kelsey is coach of the year. I mean, Bruce Pearl, God bless him, he's probably the best coaching overall this year because his team's the best, but that's just pathetic. You don't know how good they actually are. Is it just because he's a really good coach already, but he's got excellent players? Pat Kelsey had nothing injury. He had basically dust. He had a tumbleweed, I imagine, through the Yum Center that was rolling through with how much he was left. Similar
Yes.
to Calipari when he said, "I'm winning to meet the players of the new team," and there was no team. That was literally Pat Kelsey's situation. There was no team. He got, I would say, the best point guard in the ACC in Chucky Hepburn. He's got a good center in James Scott, who looks like Bane now from you remember Bane in Batman movies? He looks like him. I think he's coach of the year. I think Mark Pope was in the running for a bit, but has fallen off. I think it's now between Pat Kelsey, I would have one. Dusty May is two. Down at Michigan is almost as astonishing as the turnaround at Louisville. I mean, they had Juwan Howard, who I've called the Scott Frost of the college basketball world. Juwan Howard. If he was up 10, you knew they would lose that game. The way he would work. Oh my gosh, they're up 10. They're going to lose this game. He lost to Vanderbilt up double digits, I think, in the NIT. You know how embarrassing it is to lose to Vanderbilt in the NIT? Like, that's just a sentence that sounds embarrassing. I lost to Vanderbilt while leading in the NIT. Oh my gosh, that's so disheartening for them. And then third, I would have Bruce Pearl. That's my top three: Kelsey, Dusty May, and Bruce Pearl. Do you agree with that?
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I would throw, and this may be a long one, but I would throw, even though he's been a beacon of consistency, I could make an argument you could throw Tom Izzo in there for what he's done at Michigan State. I could make a real good case for him or Todd Golden.
And maybe somebody else that's flying under the radar I've heard nobody talk about is Rick Pitino at St. John's.
Yes.
I mean, they won the Big East for the first time outright in 40 years. I mean, St. John's was literally just a dust. You know, they were irrelevant for basically the last 30 years. And then he goes there in year one, almost makes the tournament, but doesn't. He's, I think, the first team out or second team out. And then this year, they're clearly the best team in the Big East. They're a top 10 team in the country. Their defense is elite. So I think he should at least be warranted in the conversation.
And speaking of coaches, Darrell, I want to give a shout out. Darrell, to the coach that maybe not gets not a lot of love, but you know, Texas Tech coach. What's his name? I'm blanking. Daggone it. Oh no, not Mark Adams. Who's Texas Tech's head coach, Darrell? I should know this, but
Joey McGuire.
I'm blanking. Yes, thank you, Joey McGuire. No, not Joey McGuire. Their basketball coach.
Oh,
I'm blanking.
Sorry, basketball head coach. My bad. Grant McCastle.
Yes, Grant McCastle. Thank you very much. Blanking there for a second. Grant McCastle. He's another one. He's flown under the radar because you remember, Darrell, when Pop Isaac transferred to Creighton and went with Greg McDermott at Creighton, a lot of people thought him leaving was going to be the nail in Texas Tech's coffin. And they just beat Kansas by the double digits not that long ago. He's flown under the radar, in my opinion. He could make a good case for to be a finalist.
I completely agree with you. I can't even disagree with you. I think these are all good names, and I think this highlights how good the turnaround has been and how deep coaching of the year is. Like, I don't remember, I'm not too involved in coach of the year discussions, but there's just been some amazing turnarounds, some amazing stories this year. Like, normally I would even think about in a normal year, well, the Villanova head coach, I mean, they were completely in the dustbin last year as well, and now they're decent at 18 and 13. You know, he might be in the conversation, but it's so much depth this year, he's not even in the conversation. I think Nate Oates is another one. He would be in the conversation normally, or the Florida's head coach. I mean, Florida wasn't this good last year. You know, Florida was decent. They weren't this good, though, but they're not even in the conversation because it's just how deep coach of the year is. I mean, it's insane. I think a product of it.
Kelvin Sampson, not to cut you off, Darrell, but I know he's a beacon of consistency in Houston, but look what he's done in year one in the Big 12, or excuse me, year two. Yeah, I believe it's year two in the conference.
I think now they're undisputably the best program in the Big 12. Like Kansas has that mantle for like 20 years. I mean, Houston, what they've done, won it back-to-back times. They almost never lose. They've lost one. They haven't lost a game. Houston has in
Mm-hmm.
regulation in the Big 12 this year. Do you know how
Mm-hmm.
insane that is?
Yeah,
I mean, that's a
that's
good
pretty
league.
insane.
That is a good league with some good teams like Arizona, Texas Tech, and Kansas. Those are good teams. And they have the fact not only
Mm-hmm.
to not lose to them, but not even to lose to them in regulation. They lost one game to Texas Tech, and it was a back and forth
Mm-hmm.
game and winning the overtime. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're right. He does
And
deserve, and he is such a good coach. He's just under the radar for whatever reason. I don't know if it's just because he's a quiet, reserved type of guy. He doesn't have that flair that Dan Hurley
mm-hmm.
has, or Rick Pitino, or Pat Kelsey. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't bring that energy. He's just more calm, cool, and collected.
Mm-hmm. And what I'll say to this too is the real last name I'll throw in the hat before I get to my Bill Self question, because I want to get your thoughts on it. TJ Awesenberger at Iowa State. Look at what he's done for that program. They used to be the laughing stock. They used to be the team that you looked at on the schedule and like, oh, we've got to break that week. Let's check that off as a win. And now Iowa State's a perennial top 15 team.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Obviously, great names. They had an 18-point lead over Auburn before blowing it in the Maui tournament. And I know it was at the beginning of the year, but having that large
Mm-hmm.
of a lead against Auburn at any point in the season alone should give you high regards and respect. So that's just
Mm-hmm.
my. What do you want to ask me about Bill Self?
So I kind of threw this round before you came on, Darrell, and kind of want to get your thoughts on it. How many more years do you think Bill Self's got at Kansas? Has he lost his touch? Because Kansas never used to be like this, Darrell. Kansas used to be the team that you may get them once, and they may have one bad loss throughout the year, but Bill Self always found a way to right the ship. But now teams are going into Fall Gallon, dominating them, beating them. Like, what's your opinion on that? Is it Bill Self? Is it his scheme? Like, what's the deal there?
Well, if I had those answers, I probably wouldn't be on here with you. I would probably be in Lawrence right now, dissecting their problems. So I don't have all the answers on in life, but what I will say is Bill Self has enough capital to where he gets to leave wherever he wants to because he's won 2 national championships. When you do that,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of get to make your own rules, similar to Dan Hurley. Like, I think the reason Dan Hurley gets away with all the crap he does is because he's back-to-back national champions. When you win a lot, you
Mm-hmm.
get away with it. And because Kansas went on of success in the Big 12, like for example, and this is crazy, but this is true, okay? They won the regular
Mm-hmm.
season champion for the Big 12 from 2004 season all the way to the 2017 season in a row. Do you know how difficult that is to win over a decade's worth of championships, regular season championships in a conference? The Big 12, which before the SEC this year was presumed correctly as the premier conference in college basketball. The amount of winning Bill Self has done at Kansas is
Mm-hmm.
insane. He's
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion the greatest coach in the history of Kansas basketball. I don't know how anybody can even be close to him. I know they're having a quote unquote down year, but all it takes is because of how good, if their predictive metrics are right, all they have to do is beat a 2 seed or a 3 seed and they're in the Sweet 16, and then people will be like, oh, it's a fun season. Kansas made the Sweet 16.
Well, and like you said, Darrell, like I don't want to zoom past what you said of them winning the conference as many times as straight years as they did. Like, even if it's a bad conference, that's still something to be incredibly proud of. And it's something that very few teams, very few coaches could say they have done. And like you said, when you've done a lot of winning, you get to call your shot. It's just for me, Darrell, growing up watching Kansas, I always like seeing them in the state they are now, having back to back years where they're kind of slumping, and then like I'm used to seeing Kansas by this point cranking it into gear and winning these basketball games. What I grew up on. I'm not used to seeing Kansas getting trounced double digits by Texas Tech, winning games they should be winning by more, and then opposing teams coming into Fall Allen and putting a hurting on them. I'm not used to that. That's why I kind of like, is Bill Self lost a touch? Is it the scheme? Or am I just too used to them winning too much? I've
I
got
think
conditioned to
I
it.
think first off, it's Kansas. So there's not enough
Kansas.
high expectations for Kansas that you can have. They're in that, they're the blue blood. They're in the same tier as Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, where their fans every year believe they should win the national championship. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't disagree with that notion. Every year I think Kentucky's going to win the national championship. That is my goal entering the season is, hey, this team, there's no like, well, this year we shouldn't even think about. No, it's always national championship at the beginning. Yeah. Now the expectations change based on injuries and how the season's going and stuff, but there's never a season where Kansas fans should enter not thinking we're going to win the national championship. But looking at their past recent results, I mean, they played Houston, who's in 1 seed,
Mm-hmm.
at Houston, and they lost by 6 points, 59-65. And then the game before that, they played Texas Tech, who we were talking about with not Joey McGuire,
Grant McCastle.
Grant McCastro. They lost to Texas Tech by 5, 78-73. I mean, if you were Arizona and you lost those 2 games by that much, nobody would blink an eye. I think everybody is focusing rightly, and I focused on this too, the BYU game, because they just got hammered in a way I don't think Kansas has ever been hammered. They lost by 34, and they never were even competitive, right, in that game. But BYU isn't a scrub. They're a pretty solid team. They just beat Iowa State at Iowa State today, or I guess yesterday, depending on where you live. They're a good team. I think it was just a case that maybe it snuck up on Kansas, and you look at the schedule and like, oh well, we're going to BYU. Well, this would be an easy game we win, and then my goodness, they just shoot the lights out because they scored 91 points, and they got you. Well, I think I think if Kansas was getting blown out more consistently, I would be worried about it. But the fact they played very competitively against Texas Tech and Houston, I mean, this is not a team I would be surprised making Elite Eight. I think they can make an Elite Eight depending on the path they get. Like if they get, let me put it this way: if it's a 6-3 matchup, they get, and I doubt they'll be a 6 seed, but they could still be a 6 seed. If they get Texas A&M as the 3 seed in their region, I wouldn't be surprised if Texas A&M lost to Kansas. I think Kansas is a very talented team and a dangerous team. Also, the reason Kansas is disappointing was they were presumed going into the season to be winning the national championship. I mean, they were the preseason number 1 team in the country. They had Hunter Dickinson return. It just hasn't worked.
KJ Adams.
It just hasn't worked. I don't know why it hasn't worked, but it just hasn't worked with them. Now, I don't watch as much Kansas as I probably should because there's just way too much college basketball going on. But you feel like a lineup with KJ Adams and Hunter Dickinson, that front court's one of the best front courts in the country. You feel like that's the way it should be, but clearly it's just not materializing the way it should be this year.
Well, the thing too is, Daryl, like the thing is with the Big 12, I've always viewed them as the best conference, no doubt about it. There is no other arguments. They were above and beyond. It's almost like the Big 12 altogether has kind of come down a notch, where it was always Big 12, ACC, and then the SEC. Now it's almost like the ACC is taking a big step down. The Big 12 has gone to number 2, and like the SEC is now taking that mantle of we're the best conference. We're proving it each week. And the thing is with the Big 12, Daryl, there's 3 teams realistically right now I think that are going to win the Big 12 tournament. That would be Houston, Tech, and probably Kansas. And that's it.
I would throw
Maybe
Iowa
Baylor.
State in there. Iowa State's got to
Yeah,
be in there.
yeah, Iowa State. How could I forget about them? Maybe Baylor because
No,
of what
Baylor.
Scott.
No, I
You
don't.
don't
They're
think?
not consistent enough. They're not just consistent enough. They're closer to a bubble team than they are winning the Big 12, in my opinion. Like they're a
Well,
10 seed this year. They're just too inconsistent. You've got to win like 3 or 4 consecutive games. And that's what these good teams, the great teams do, is they are just able to dominate the food. And Baylor can't do that or hasn't done that throughout the entire season. So I just don't believe in them
and
to win the Big 12.
and the reason why I put Baylor in there, Darrell, is because of Scott Drew, like of his pedigree. Like he has earned some trust with me. That's why I put him. Why I put Baylor in there because they always seem to be there. But I see your point because, like you said, there's so much college basketball. I haven't watched that much Baylor. I've seen their record. I watched their game against Cincinnati, and I was like, "What is this?" Like they lost to TCU, I believe it was. Which don't get me wrong, Jamie Dixon has done a great job at TCU, but Baylor should not be losing to TCU. I'm sorry, they shouldn't be, but here we are. That's why I kind of put Baylor in that conversation of possibly winning it because Scott Drew has that pedigree.
No, I got you. I just didn't have anything to say about it. So
Yeah. Oh well. I will say this though, Darrell. Let me ask you something. Since we talked about the SEC and I mean the ACC bids, let's talk about the SEC. How many bids you think they're realistically going to get? Like
13.
realistically. Oh wow. Okay. So
Yeah, I know.
obviously Florida,
No, it's easier
Alabama.
just to say who isn't. It's easier just to say who isn't. There's 16 teams.
Okay, Darrell, who are the 3 teams that are not besides I guess LSU and South Carolina, the 2 obvious ones? Vandy?
Oklahoma.
Is that the Oklahoma? Okay.
Vanderbilt's in. They're a lock. They're
Okay.
not even. They could lose, I think, every game, and they're in. Arkansas
Okay.
is a bubble team, but they just beat Vanderbilt on the road today. Vanderbilt has 20 wins and they play in the SEC. If you have 20 wins and you're in the SEC, to me, you're a lock. That's just how good the SEC is this year. They also got rid of their one big issue that was keeping them off the bubble with a road win at Texas A&M, the same Texas A&M who beat number 1 Auburn today. Vanderbilt has wins over also Missouri as well. They beat Texas, they beat Kentucky, and they beat Tennessee. So to me, they're safely in. Vanderbilt is. The other teams we can talk about, I mean, Georgia and Arkansas has 7 SEC wins. I mean, that doesn't
Oh yeah.
sound like a lot, but with how stacked the SEC is, I mean, that is a lot. Even Arkansas, with their semi-light schedule, they've beaten Missouri, and Missouri is a very competitive SEC team. They beat Texas. Texas.
Uh oh. I don't know if that. I believe Darrell went out for a second. I think. But I'm a very big advocate for Georgia. You know, like he said, and
Today,
you know he mentioned. There you are, Darrell. Oh.
I'm good. I got you.
Okay, go for it, Darrell. Go for it.
I was going to say Arkansas is beating Georgia, which is a key win for them since that was a double bubble game. They've also beaten Texas. So I feel like even if you just compare those SEC teams, Arkansas is going to have the advantage since they won both of the double bubble games. And I think Texas, because they beat Mississippi State to them, they got a good quad 1 road win. So now Texas plays Oklahoma in another double bubble game. So, you know, it's still iffy for them, but you win 7 games in the SEC and how weak the bubble is overall. 13's realistic right now. If Oklahoma wins, I might push it up to 14. Now it's disgusting that a 6-11 SEC teams going to get in, but you know what? Some of these other conferences should win some games.
Here's the thing, Darrell, and I know people listening are going to be like, "Oh, he's a SEC homer." No, the SEC is just that good. And Darrell, I've been an advocate for Georgia for a long time. I thought Georgia was a really good, solid team, but them beating Florida kind of cemented to me, okay, how can you leave them out now? Because they beat you guys before that Florida win, and Kentucky by all margins is a top 15 team. And the fact that they beat you all, even though it was at home, but they also beat Florida at home. Like you said, I'm a big advocate for Georgia. I think they're going to be a team that gets in.
They're a lock.
They're a lock. Okay, and the thing, go for it, Darrell.
Yeah, I have no doubt that Georgia is a lock. I mean, they're on a hot streak. They've won 3 straight games, so it goes back to winning late. They beat Florida, Texas, and South Carolina. Texas, South Carolina road wins. Always good for bubble teams to win road games in general. They beat – who else have they beaten? They beat Oklahoma, which is a quasi-bubble game, and they beat Kentucky. I know they've probably got one of the softer – resumes, but that Florida win is just so much. It's by far the best win that a bubble team has. So they're probably in just because of that game alone.
Florida was number 3 in the country, I think, when they beat them.
Yeah, they're still number 5.
Yeah, so that's a top 5 win as we sit tonight. And unless Florida drops drastically, it'll probably still be a top 10 win. So as you say it, Darrell, I agree with you. They're a lock. The only thing for me, Darrell, is I'll say this. Like I think we all can agree, the SEC is going to get 6 in max, maybe 7. Because some people could make an argument for Indiana, and I know if Jeffrey was here right now, he would be all for this.
I would love to have a Twitter Spaces with him. I've been trying to get him to do a Twitter Spaces and just do a bracketology with a bunch of people and just go through. I know Will and D and Jackson have their show. And trying to push them to make it a call-in show where we just comb over these resumes. But Indiana is an interesting case. I'll tell you what I think most people think, and I somewhat agree with it, but I'm not a fan of the other team. Indiana plays Ohio State for their final game of the season. That's a win. That's a must-win game for probably both teams. Even if Ohio State wins that game, I probably want to pick them because they'd be 18-13 in a pretty bad league. Well, not a bad league, but in a league not nearly as strong as the SEC overall. And I don't think that Purdue win is aging as well, and I don't think the Kentucky win is aging as well as people are making it out to be. That's just my opinion, though, on that. I mean, Purdue has really hit a slide recently. They had a 4-game losing streak recently. But, that game's going to be massive on the schedule. And that game could have a large impact on, is it going to be 13, 12, or 14?
And Darrell, the thing I think that's really saving Indiana the Michigan State win. I kind of felt like that was a season-saving win because by all stretches, it seemed like Indiana was ready to pack up shop because they seemed done. They seemed like they didn't care. But then Mike Woods announces his resignation before that game, I believe. Yeah, it was before that game. And what happens? They beat Michigan State. You cannot tell me that was not a season-saving win. That's the only reason why we're having this conversation.
Yeah, it was. And Indiana, because of that game, they're on the bubble. I mean, they were teetering, just slowly falling off. But, Arkansas, Indiana, Texas, Oklahoma, these are just teams that are going to have lived on the bubble for weeks now. They're going to continue living on the bubble with every result.
And Darrell, throw a crazy one at you. I saw a bubble with Xavier on it. We haven't talked about them yet.
They're a little bit further away. I understand why somebody could have them. They have an argument. Xavier did go on the road and beat Marquette. That's a very high quality win. They also beat Creighton
Mm-hmm.
recently, but their overall record is 19-10. Not exactly I would call great. I don't know about you, Austin. I wouldn't call that great, but
No, it's serviceable.
right there, I'm looking at
It,
their non-conference games. The best team they beat in non-conference was South Carolina and Wake Forest. They didn't really play anybody else in non-conference play other than Michigan. They
and that
lost to them by like 25 points. So, if
that
they were
Wake
to find
win
an extra
is.
quality win in non-conference that was worth anything, I would suggest putting them in. But their only problem for them is they've only got 2 wins against tournament teams right now, it looks like, and that's Creighton and Marquette. So I think that's
Yeah,
something
that.
that he's going to be looking at. Oh, only 2 wins against the field as of right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the thing too is, Daryl, comparing all these resumes, I've seen a bubble world where West Virginia, which that helps our resume out. West Virginia's on the wrong side of the bubble, I think, right now, but they're
No,
on the
they're in. I
bubble.
think they're in. I haven't heard them on the bubble conversation.
Okay, I've seen them on the bubble a couple times. Now that may just be like I've watched like Field of '68, Cass, Lenardi, Fanta. Now everybody's opinion is different, but I I would say West Virginia is in. I'm with you in that, real, but the people that I have seen think they're on the bubble still.
I mean, they're 18-12 in overall record, so it's not really the best overall record. Today they did beat Utah on the road, which always good when you win a road game. But let's look in non-conference play. I think it's when they kind of did their damage. They beat Gonzaga and Arizona in non-conference play. Those are some pretty good
Hmm.
wins. They beat Kansas as well. Their non-conference
Yeah.
play is what's gonna, or I guess Arizona's a conference game now because of the stupid schedules. They beat Iowa. I think they just got too many quality wins at the top. They beat Iowa State, Arizona, Gonzaga. I just think that's too many quality wins in order for them to miss out or even be on the bubble.
So, and that's the thing too. And the Louisville loss, we beat them in Maui, and that's looking better and better as the day goes on. And like you said, they've got too many quality wins to make that. The problem is, Daryl, is not a lot of times the committee sometimes looks at your record. Your record could say 20-12, and I feel like if you're not a blue blood, because I'm with you, like West Virginia is another team that's kind of went under the radar. Like after Bob Huggins, like I mentioned earlier, they kind of hit the slope of they had a really bad year last year, but here they are back up again. Here comes West Virginia. And I kind of feel like not a lot of people are giving them credit. Like that's why I don't think they're getting talks for a lot of conversations, except like us, to real, because we watch everything, or at least we try to.
No, I agree, and I think this has been a pretty good conversation going on. I mean, this is pretty in-depth analysis of the bubble situation going on. I mean, the
Hmm.
unfortunate part about it is we're going to have some thief come out of nowhere and steal one of these spots after all this work, and it's going to rearrange everything we've been doing. But I think this has been a good
Hmm.
baseline of what's been going on. Because, like
And
some
I'll
people
say
I
this.
know, like for me, it's amazing you look at the same data. Like for me, I thought Wake Forest was done after the Clemson game. I think it was the Clemson game
Hmm.
before they even
Hmm.
played
Yeah.
Duke. But some people still have Wake Forest on the bubble. So it's amazing how people see different sets of data and, come to different
Hmm.
conclusions.
Hmm. And I'll say this too, Daryl. Like, and last thing I want to ask you before we get on out of here is the Big Ten. They're doing the system where the bottom three teams don't even get a crack at it. Do you think that's right? Especially for like an Iowa team or a Penn State team who have been playing their butts off and have gotten some good wins. And but they won't even get a chance to get a crack at it to be a bid thief. What do you think of that format?
I mean, I don't like it because it's more basketball, but this isn't something that's going to matter. The ACC is doing the same thing. Washington, Penn State, Iowa, not Syracuse, Boston College, Miami, and who's the other team in the ACC as of right now? NC
Is it
State.
Stanford or Cal? NC
No, it's
State.
NC
Okay.
State. Stanford's
Okay.
safely in
Yeah.
along with Cal. They're below average teams, but they're not complete garbage cans. Those teams, I'm going to go out on them and say they're not going to win the Big Ten and the ACC. So at the end of the day, this isn't something that matters significantly to me. I'm sorry, but if you're in the ACC, for example, if you can't win 7 games in the ACC or 7 games in the Big Ten, why should I care? Why should you complain? This is just a college football playoff expansion type argument. You know what the solution is? Get better. Get better.
That's it. That's a good point, Dario. And now that you come and think of it, you're right. Because, well, here's the thing too. Here, the crazy part about it is, Dario, you look at it. Iowa is technically not done yet. If they somehow beat Michigan State on Thursday, I doubt that's going to happen. But they could possibly sneak their way back in, and thus kick someone else out. And that's where the argument's going to come in, because they're going to be like, oh, you kicked this team out, but this team has the better resume. No, because they did this. And like the single buys and double buys, like people are already, like I see people already complain about that format, Dario. And they're like, thanks to conference realignment, we got this to deal with now. Thanks a lot. Like, like, like Dario, we hear it all the time. People said it's bad for the sport, and in some cases it is, because it affects the basketball aspect of the world. Like Colorado jumping to the Big 12, you know, they've fallen off a cliff this year, and a lot of that's because a lot of their talent has gone away. Javon Hadley, he's at Louisville now. He transferred to Louisville this past offseason. He was one of their key pieces. KJ Simpson, he's in Charlotte with the Hornets. He got drafted. It, like that's just my overall thought. It don't matter what we do, Daryl, someone's going to complain about it.
Yeah, I know. And the people complaining about it are also the people, at least from what I've seen, are on the bottom. I don't think that's a coincidence at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, like let me ask you, Daryl, as a Kentucky fan, you can relate to this. Are you upset that you had to play Oklahoma and Texas possibly twice a
No, I'm not
year?
upset. I'm not upset. I think in basketball it works much better than football because there's more conference games, so you get to see everybody, or you
Mm-hmm.
can see everybody. Whereas in football, you don't even see like half your league.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing too. Like Louisville, we're seeing Cal, Stanford, SMU. Like I'm kind of looking forward to games that I never thought I'd get to see in my lifetime, because like Louisville, like Kentucky to California, that's not logistically proper, but now we get to see it as a conference game. Like Cal gets to come to Kentucky, Texas gets to travel to Kentucky, or Kentucky gets to go to Oklahoma, play like logistically, like we're seeing teams travel to places we thought we'd never get to see them, and I think it is kind of cool. But like you said, it is the teams that are on the bottom that are gonna whine and complain. And don't get me wrong, like eventually it's gonna become 2 super conferences, probably, like you've mentioned, Daryl. Like I hope not, for the sake of the sport, but like you said, it's the ones on the bottom. And like you said, Kentucky now could see Texas and Oklahoma twice a year. They could see these other teams within their conference twice a year. And I think it provides better data because you played them twice. It wasn't a
Right.
fluke.
I think there's a lot of the larger conferences in a way make much more sense in college basketball than they do in college football. They just don't work at all in college football because the sample size is too small. I completely
Mm-hmm.
agree with
Well,
what you're
that's the thing,
saying.
Daryl. Well, that's the thing too, Daryl, is is like you said, the data points are completely different. When people want to compare the two sports, not to get down in the rabbit hole here, but you really can't, because college basketball, there's a chance you see a team four times, and if you like in college football, the most you could see a team is three times. That like college basketball, you can see a team four times. You could see them twice in the regular season, once in your conference tournament, and once in March Madness. You've got a bigger sample size and bigger data points to go off of. You've got a 31 game season.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I honestly don't have anything to add. I mean,
Well, I'll say this to real. Last thing I ask you is, how confident are you about Kentucky going forward? Like, are you
the
happy with
injuries
what Mark
hurt.
Pope's done?
I think we would have been great without Jackson Robinson being hurt out for the season with a wrist injury. Butler got hurt, but he's back in it. He had a shoulder injury. Then he played a game, half a game. Then he had another shoulder injury. So it's been tough in terms of the depth, but we're forging along. We're getting ahead, and we're a solid team. I think the ceiling has greatly lowered just because of
Mm-hmm.
situation, but it's part of the game. You can't control the injuries, and it's not an excuse. You just got to keep going forward. I mean, the SEC is going to be much harder than March Madness going forward. I think Kentucky's just going to be a 3 seed in the tournament. I expect them to make at minimum the Sweet 16. I'm hoping they get a good draw and make the Elite Eight or the Final Four. I mean, my expectation for this team is you got to make the Sweet 16. You got to make the Sweet 16. This is a good enough team to do it, and that would somewhat help for that John Calipari loss in January. So that's why I'm at. Sweet 16 is the minimum.
And the thing too is, Daryl, Kentucky, when Mark Pope came in there, Kentucky was almost like a tumbleweed too. Not as bad as Louisville by any stretch. You still had some players there. But Mark Pope had to rebuild this team too, because Calipari took everybody. And you answered my question I was going to ask next. What seed do you think y'all will be in the tournament? Because I was thinking y'all would be a 5 is where I'm at with it. A 5.
No, we got too many good wins to be a 5. We got like 9 quad 1 wins. Unfortunately, because of Louisville's artificial, they're high in the rankings because they don't have anybody they can lose to. So the AP Bowl just bumps you up because they went 2-0. We'll just keep bumping them up. Whereas Kentucky going 1-1 is better than Louisville's 2-0 weeks, just because we got to play Alabama and Texas, and you get School of the Blonde and then the Little Sisters of the Poor, and it's like, I wonder which one's more difficult.
So listen, it's all love, Daryl, but I can't help who we play. We don't schedule. We can only control our non-conference.
Yeah. How'd that work out?
We got better once we got into conference play, which furthers your point, Daryl.
You got better when you played the worst teams. That makes sense. You got better when you played crappy competition.
Okay, Daryl, you got me. Caught red-handed. Fine. Our best conference win right now is probably West Virginia, and that's saying something.
I mean, yeah, they're just they're an average team. They're fine. They're not great. They're not good. They're just.
No, I'm not admitting they are, but I'm saying though that's the best win.
Yeah, I know.
That's sad.
You guys are the reason Oklahoma's still on the bubble.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, I was watching the Sooner Smiths on the Voice of College Football, and they were talking about it, and they were talking about that Louisville win is what's keeping them alive right now. And I'm like, I'm glad that we could be some of assistance here, but
I think you all got it good, depending on how well you shoot, obviously, but you all take just so many threes, it's insane. If you all hit 15, 20 threes, you all are going to win. I don't care who you're playing, but if you shoot 15% or 20%, you're going to lose. I mean, that's just, you live by the sword, you die by the sword, and that's what Louisville's happening. They've been living by the sword because they can hit 9 or 10 threes, and you got teams that can't hit the broadside of a barn, like Miami, for example, just missing everything.
Well, and the thing too is, Daryl, at the beginning of the year, and I want to point this out, is Andy Katz, he predicted us to go to the Final Four. And when I saw that, Daryl, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I thought he was nuts. I was like, really?
Yeah,
You're
I
picking
think
us,
everybody did.
and I'm like, and I kept seeing it and seeing it. Louisville in Elite Eights and Final Fours. I even saw someone pick us to go to the national title game, and I'm thinking, listen, I was like, and Daryl, you know me, I'm a guy that don't set my expectations very high. I said 15 wins is our goal this year. Let's like 15 wins. Let's go 500. Let's not be what we were before. But when I'm seeing everyone say Louisville can make the Final Four and can do this and do that, I'm thinking, do they know something I don't?
Well, it turned out they were looking more right than you, because Louisville, I mean,
Yeah,
they're
but
16-2 in the ACC. They've lost 6 or 7 games all year. They're a good team. They're a
mhm.
legitimately good team. Now I don't know how much of that is them playing cupcakes or versus them, being a good club, but we'll find out in March. But I'm seeing some interesting matchups that you all could play. You all could play. I saw VCU as an example of a first round game. I mean, that would be a very entertaining game. I'm not sure if you saw VCU versus George Mason.
I think that would be a slobber knocker of a game because VCU plays defense hard. They're physical. I feel like we would get tested big time. That would be a game that would probably be like a 52-50 type game. But yes, I have watched VCU play a little bit. I watched them play Duquesne, I think, last night or tonight, if you're on the West Coast, and I've watched them play Dayton, and they can run you out of the building too. That's what's
Yeah,
crazy about it.
I know.
And
They're a good team. I
and
mean, I saw them play George Mason, and I thought, wow, this team's actually good. They just passed the eye test, and they look like a tournament team. So I think that'd be a fun matchup. Their guards look good. I think Chucky Hepburn, that'd be a good defensive assignment for him. So, I think that'd
mhm,
be an interesting type of game. I saw y'all could play. I don't understand that. I think because of how many SEC teams were going to be forced into possibly a first round rematch, which would be unfortunate this year. We're going to have some bracket breaking rules, some normal tendencies, because they try not to schedule rematches until I think the Sweet 16. I think that might have to go
mhm,
out the window because too many teams have played in the SEC and they're all too good. And Kentucky's played Louisville, for example. Oklahoma's played Louisville. You've got a lot of teams that are at the bottom of the league beat the
mhm,
teams at the top. I mean, even Arkansas beat Michigan, for example.
mhm.
So that's
Yeah.
something to watch
Well,
for.
I've also seen, speaking of Arkansas, us being predicted to play Arkansas in a 7-10 bracket,
Well, that'd be something.
which
I think Arkansas would have the athleticism. Arkansas would have the speed as well. But the question is, can
mhm,
they just make shots? Because if they can make
ye-
shots, they're unstoppable. If they can't beat anybody. I mean, they got blown out by South Carolina because they couldn't hit the broadside of a barn.
mhm,
That's going to happen. We got players like DJ Wagner playing your point guard. He's not really a shooter, so you can protect in the paint more. And Big Z, if he has an off day, that was the plan as well. We don't need at least I assume it was the plan. We don't need an inside guy or a point guard who can shoot a three because we got this 7-footer that can shoot threes. But
mhm.
when he goes 0 for 9, for example, it's going to, they can pack the paint, slow the game down, and really grind out Arkansas. So it'll be interesting to see.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's a lot of possible matchups we could see, Daryl. I mean, I've seen a couple brackets where Kentucky and Louisville could play in the rounds of 32, which I would be all for that, Daryl. Be honest with you. And my biggest dream is I would love to see a Louisville Kentucky national title game. That would be fun because in our illustrious history, we've played Final Fours, we've played Elite Eight, Sweet 16. I don't think we've ever played for it all, though. I do not believe. We haven't.
Well,
So it'd be pretty
there's a
cool if
lot
that
of
could
luck
happen.
involved in that. So
Yeah, that is true. That is true. There is a lot of luck. But that would be cool if we played for it all. Will it happen? I doubt it. But it is cool to see that we're on the same side of the bracket. And I know, funny enough, Daryl, I'll bring this up to you, but they had Kentucky as a 3 seed in one of them, and they had you playing Colgate out of the Patriot League, I believe it is. And I was like, that could be interesting.
it could, but Colgate's a type of team. They always, well, at least from what I remember, they've been on a hot streak winning their league, but the Patriot League's not a good league. I'm worried about playing
No, no,
Chattanooga. The Mocs, they're a good team, but I've got to get going, Austin. I've been on here for a long time, so I've got to
yes.
get going. It's been good talking to you.
Yes, it's been fantastic talking to you, Daryl. Go Cats for your sake. Hopefully they do good, and I appreciate the call as always, Daryl. You're a
Well, thank you for
fantastic
having me
caller.
on.
You're welcome. And I plan to do this more, so stop by anytime. But there was Daryl. Appreciate him calling in. A fantastic caller, always wonderful. And if anybody else wants to call in, they can. One last go around. If not, that is okay too. Two, but with all that being said, it was a great tournament talk. We talked about a lot of different things tonight. Bubblicious teams, coaches. This was fun. We're going to try to do this more often, be a little sooner. I was watching all the other games, but if you enjoyed this content, which I know you did, hopefully, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, click on the notification bell so you never miss another great live stream or video. And Jackson will be back soon, not to fear. He will be back. And hope y'all enjoyed it. Make sure you follow. And I'm going to do Jackson a service. Make sure you follow Jackson on youtube.com at JacksonJohnson979. Not on YouTube, where he's almost to 500 subscribers. He's got a lot of interviews coming out with a lot of great people. Make sure to check him out. You can follow Jackson on X at JacksonVOC at the Voice of College Football. You can follow him on Instagram, on Threads, and you can also follow Alabama at the Voice of College Football as well. If you're not a basketball person, but you tune in because of Amir Jackson and hear us ramble on all night, that's okay too. But Alabama, the Voice of College Football, where he hosts Alabama Live, where he does Collins with Jeffrey from Only Talk Sports, and so much more. And if you're into Blue Sky, which, be honest with you, I'm not hip to it, but if you are, Jackson also has a Blue Sky profile as well. Make sure you follow him there as well. And make sure you follow me on X/Twitter as well. Follow me here on my YouTube channel, Sport Talk Lost in 2002. Like, comment, subscribe to all of us. And Jackson will be back soon. And we'll look to do this again. And hopefully, everyone's season's going healthy. March Madness is around the corner. Cannot wait. Last week of the season, conference tournament coming up. Looking forward to it. Another great day of college basketball is ahead of us tomorrow. Go Cards, everybody.